everyone. Hello, Tom on Instagram, Ashley on Instagram. Comments are working here. We are almost good to go. In fact, if I can get back to my notes, sound is good from Instagram. Thank you for that, Ashley. Where are we here? Is my camera straight? Yeah, that's not bad. It's going to be a crap show today because I'm almost out of coffee. I need more coffee. I need a Starbucks run, but it's not going to happen. So we're going to try to force through. Welcome, everybody. January 23, 2025, episode 324. Welcome to Mornings with Scott, the best damn business show for medium and small businesses on the planet. Did you see all of the snow and ice the last day or two in Florida, Texas, Louisiana? As a proud Canadian up here on a ski mountain where I live, we laugh at that. But if you live down there, could you imagine paying all the money as a family and going on holiday to go to the warm south and you end up in an inch or two of snow and cold temperatures? That would suck big time. There was a big meme going around, not a big meme, but a meme that was popular going around social media yesterday, and it had the weather map and it was blue all over America, and then it had laid over top of that is Trump has only been president one day and he's already cured global warming. That made me laugh, but I thought more appropriate would have been a comment that if you are a northern liberal, then hell has indeed frozen over. All right, we wasted enough time waiting for people to get in here. Let's get going with the content. Some of you may know this is just breaking press, breaking news as I was logging on here. Some of you may know that I'm part of the super motocross community. I used to compete in that sport. I follow it religiously. It's pretty much these days the only sport that I do follow religiously. We did an episode on the bankruptcy of KTM. I had my analysts research some of that and did an episode on this very channel. I don't know. I think it was right before the holidays. I don't recall when. It was a long episode. Anyways, we did a review of the bankruptcy of this motorcycle and power sports manufacturer, and that was for that community in particular. Anyways, big news coming out of that community this morning, which is a more interesting story from a business perspective. And so the two top performers, these are globally recognized and branded athletes making millions and millions and millions of dollars. The Lawrence family, Jet Lawrence and Hunter Lawrence, put out a statement this morning, bright and early, says, over the last 2 weeks, we have become suspicious of potentially fraudulent activity related to one of our business accounts. Following an initial investigation, we became aware of and in possession of evidence of misuse and misappropriation of our personal funds by our agent, Lucas Myrtle, for his benefit. And as of 9 a.m. Eastern this morning, we have fired him. Further, Wasserman has fired him as well. Wasserman is the agency that Myrtle works for. And we will continue our investigation and turn over all of our findings to the relevant authorities shortly. Wasserman will continue to represent us with Jacob Hayes and Travis Clark taking over management duties. So I've told you who the players are on the athlete side. That would be the Lawrences. This Lucas Myrtle is, for this sport and other action sports, really a super agent. Everybody who's anybody works through Lucas Myrtle in that community. And this is one hell of an allegation. Wasserman is a sports agency, independent, fully integrated agency headquartered on the West Coast, operates globally with 28 in the presence of 28 countries and 68 cities, focuses on sports, music, entertainment, culture, serves talent, brands, properties on a global scale. It's close to 3,000 employees. Top agencies for WNBA players, Olympic athletes, action sports stars, has been expanding recently through acquisition, including into football and hockey. All right, so this is the Wasserman. So they're a big deal. Lucas Myrtle himself is a big deal. And here we have a press release from the Lawrence brothers, who, in the grand scheme of things, are kids and they don't write legal statements. This was written by somebody else, sophisticated, and it specifically names this Lucas Myrtle for misuse and misappropriation, which is a way to not say fraud and get sued for more defamation. So this is ugly. This is ugly. But I have questions. I don't know if any of you have questions about this. Those following on Twitter or X in particular from that community. Does this Wasserman agency have no internal controls? This Myrtle, they bought the Myrtle agency, and he, as near as I can tell, is an employee. Isn't that the way agencies work? He's not some sort of loose contractor. He's actually an employee, a representative of the agency, and somehow he gets access to the bank accounts of the talent to go and quote unquote misuse and misappropriate personal funds for his own benefit. That's even possible. You have what does that say? 3,000 employees. You don't have any internal controls on this. Why is the agent signing checks personally? This is sketchy. I don't understand how this is possible. It's not like they're dealing with one guy, right? It's not like it's just an individual agent with no, a couple of accountants in the background, but this guy controls everything. Also, if there was fraud and a bunch of money missing, if this was a material number, meaning a large number, a significant loss, as opposed to there's $100 missing and we think you took that to buy some Starbucks, which I desperately need right now. The insurance policy for this would be at Wasserman, right? It wouldn't be at Myrtle. And so where are the internal controls? Where's the insurance policies? Has Wasserman agreed to make them whole? How much money are we talking about here anyways in this allegation? There's way, way more to this story that we are not hearing about. And by the way, everyone is innocent until proven guilty. So I think I don't understand why this allegation in the press release is so specific. That just seems to be asking for troubles. It's none of our business as a community. And there's so many other athletes and talents that this guy represents. Innocent until proven guilty. What the hell's going on with Wasserman? Jet, Hunter Lawrence. Why the hell are you sticking with his agency, Wasserman? Why do you think that they are not complicit in this or negligent in this? You better have a deal. You better have a deal tied up with them. That seems strange. Anyways, we're short on details on that. I was just shocked by it. I was logging in, and this was a brand new press release. Amazon is pulling out of Quebec. There was a news story on CTV News, which is a Canadian television broadcaster, says news coming out of Quebec. Spokesman for Amazon confirming to CTV News the online retail giant is pulling out of the province. The company says it will cease operations over the next 2 months in 7 operation sites, 1 fulfillment center, 2 sorting centers, 3 delivery stations, and 1 large delivery station, as opposed to those 3 smaller delivery stations. 1 large delivery station that's located within a sorting center. A spokesman with Amazon said 1,700 regular employees in Quebec and 250 temporary seasonal workers will be affected. And then the newscaster says Amazon says it is returning to a third-party model and that this move has nothing to do with unionization. She said that with a straight face. Had nothing to do with unionization in Quebec. In other news, TikTok being temporarily unbanned has nothing to do with Trump wanting to capture $500 billion from nothing. Remember the Trump bit yesterday? Not a bit. It was actually during his news conference. They told me I went to China and he didn't go to China. He said I spoke with the shareholders of TikTok, and if I don't permit TikTok, it's worth 0. Can you imagine? And if I do permit it, it's worth $1 trillion. 0, $1 trillion. 0, $1 trillion, depending on the actions that I take. I just think that somebody should buy this, and the U.S. government should get half. not because of unionization, not because Trump wants a $500 billion. Also, in other news, Zuckerberg, this is for you. What's your name on username on Twitter? Brokeback. I can't remember what your name is. Zuckerberg, just at the inauguration, you asked me to comment on this. He just definitely had a sore neck. Had nothing to do with staring at the cleavage of Bezos' fiance. That's all I'm going to go there. Speaking of TikTok, Kevin O'Leary was on social yesterday talking about the Chinese golden share. The Chinese golden share. Before I start, I just want to say I love the Chinese. I just can't help myself. I love them individually. I love them as a country. I love them in business, even though I acknowledge all of the problems. All the problems. I don't dispute any of them. I know the business culture is different. I know the rules of the game are just way different from what we're used to. I know that from a Western perspective, we find it shady and against our values and all that sort of stuff. I know about the spying. I know for a fact that the Chinese listen to this show right now. I know that absolutely for a fact. I know the stealing of intellectual property from Western businesses. I know all of that. But I have worked with enough Chinese entrepreneurs, enough Chinese companies to have a more nuanced view of this issue. And the bottom line is, I just can't help myself. I've always been a fan. I enjoy working with the Chinese, and there's a lot. I think that Canada and China should have much, much, much closer relations. It is ridiculous that both sides have trashed that relationship to some extent. And I would like to see new Canadian leadership reach out to the Chinese. And I know that the Chinese have already reached out to the Canadian government in the light of these U.S. tariffs and said, hey, we can be closer. We can start buying some stuff from you. We ought to be pursuing that and diversifying our risk of being just tied to one superpower that doesn't apparently have any respect or love for its neighbors and partners. And so this business culture issue works the other way too, has always been my view. We always think, the Chinese are so bad and they steal stuff and they spy on us. Well, the Western business, in my experience, isn't so innocent as well. I was once hired, my firm, Sinclair Range, was once hired by a Chinese public company. That's not technically true. We were hired by a Canadian public company in the mining and resource sector, but it was owned predominantly by a Chinese public company in China. I won't tell you which one, but in China back then, probably still today, but back then, 49% of the shares were available to the public, and 51% of the company was controlled by the Chinese government, as seems to always be the case. And so they'd invested hundreds and hundreds of millions, close to $1 billion, into a couple of resource projects in North America, and they were just getting completely screwed. The Western management, and I won't again tell you who or where, but the Western management was just very, like Lucas Myrtle is being accused of being, very fast and loose with the cash. And so, sorry, I'm just going to check out my Instagram here. Yeah, we're still going well. Fast and loose with the cash. And we were asked, my firm was asked to do an investigation, sort of part forensics, part strategic, part why is this company doing so poorly? And Scott, you have 10 days to do this forensic investigation and report, and you have to deliver it to the board of directors, and you have to do that in Mandarin. So I feel like that was one of the best reports that Sinclair Range has ever produced to this day. I thought we did a fantastic job, and we found a ridiculous amount of fraud and shenanigans going on by the Western management team. And maybe that's why the report was so good. It was such low-hanging fruit. One example was the CEO up towards the mine site. And again, I don't want to give too much information, but not really at the mine site, maybe a couple miles away, bought a sand and gravel property and built a house on there for himself, and then sold sand and gravel from himself to the public company of which he ran. And with the public company paid exorbitant amount of monies for that sand and gravel, and then used said sand and gravel to build a road that had zero purpose. It literally went nowhere. It went into the woods into the bush in northern Canada. not towards my site. Like it was just there was no purpose. There was no purpose whatsoever. In total, hundreds of millions of dollars were wasted or stolen, and it was quite the thing. And so we wrote this. It was written in Mandarin, translated into Mandarin, and then they had their board meeting 10 days later, and they fired the guy on the spot, like right on the spot. He was gone. They brought in one of my interim executives, Sinclair Range's interim executives, to take over. We did a restructuring and a financing, and I don't think that project went well in the end, but that had nothing to do with us. We got them through that transition period, which was our job. I'd be up at like 1 in the morning, 3 in the morning, doing board calls in China for the Chinese public company, which of course was all in Mandarin, and I have a translator. It was quite the experience. I enjoyed it a lot. I think fondly of those people, and it occurred to me they're very worried about their stock. A lot of the key executives needed to promote the stock for their own personal wealth, but also, there's a lot of, they're controlled by the government. That was sort of why I went through this whole story. They're 51% controlled by the government, and they can't let the government down. They're taking money. There's a lot of personal risk to them in China, was my observation. Well, there was a video on social media yesterday with Kevin O'Leary being interviewed. Kevin O'Leary, of course, being the Canadian/American investor, Shark Tank fame, wants to buy TikTok, thinks it's worth maybe $2 billion. And here's the transcript from the video. He says, here's the problem. I learned about this golden share thing last night. Now, whoever has the golden share at a Chinese company is the only person that can decide to sell it. So how many public Chinese companies listed on NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange have the secret golden share? What is this? I don't think that's even legal. It's not disclosed in the prospectus if you're buying stock in these companies. A lot of American shareholders in this ByteDance, that's TikTok deal, I don't know if they knew about this golden share, right? But there ain't no deal until the guy with the golden share decides he wants to sell it, and that's she. But I think you're going to hear a lot of noise about this. I noticed the post from Lindsey Graham. He's freaking out about this, and he wants to make sure that he's going to put a bill out, apparently. And so Kevin Leary's just figuring out right now whether we brand this golden share or not, that nobody's selling anything until Chairman Xi, is that his name? President Xi, Chairman Xi, until he approves of such a transaction. Well, of course, wake up, Kevin. Wake up, everybody who's dealing with the Chinese and foreign business of any sort. The priorities of your counterparty are not the same of yours. The rules of the game are not the same of yours. It makes it interesting. It makes it challenging. But for you just to naively walk around and think that your regulatory system is going to sufficiently regulate the foreign counterparty, you're wrong. You're wrong. And anybody who thought that is just not paying attention. When was that? 5, 6, 8 years ago, there was a big debate and issue around Chinese listed public companies in New York, Toronto, Vancouver, that their standards of audit were different requirements than those of the Western public companies, right? And so China just said, "Nah, we're not doing that. We're not doing those audit standards. We're going to have lesser audit standards, and you're just going to have to trust this." And the exchange said, "Yeah, okay, we want your business," right? So things are different, and if you just can't walk around thinking they're not different. I was pretty shocked by Kevin O'Leary about this. So Stargate, we talked about Stargate yesterday. This 500 billion artificial intelligence infrastructure that President Trump announced. And this is from the Wall Street Journal yesterday, but also from the Wall Street Journal this morning, hours after the announcement with Trump and the Oracle guys and SoftBank and Sam Altman at ChatGPT for the $500 billion investment. I think I fell into the same mistake there as Fox News in saying it was $500 million. No, it's $500 billion, $500 billion investment in infrastructure. Hours later, Elon Musk publicly questioned whether the joint venture would ever get off the ground. Musk wrote on X, his social media platform, that two of the companies behind the project didn't have enough capital to follow through on their pledges. They don't actually have the money, Musk wrote at 11:35 p.m. Eastern time last night, replying to a post from OpenAI, the ChatGPT maker that announced a joint venture with global investor SoftBank Group and Oracle. At 12:57 a.m., Musk added SoftBank has well under 10 billion secured. I have that on good authority. So Musk is just calling BS on this entire announcement, which it might be, by the way. I mean, how often when companies say, when you're going to build an EV battery plant in Windsor, Ontario, and you make a deal with the provincial government and the federal government to secure a bunch of grants, and then you'll invest X millions of dollars into this project, do you have the X millions of dollars sitting in the bank account? No, of course you don't. It's part of your budget. It's part of your financial plan. You expect you're going to do it, but then things fall apart. They fall apart regularly. And so both sides of this could actually be true. Asked in an interview with Fox News about Musk's comments, Trump spokeswoman Caroline Leavitt basically said, "Trust us. The joint venture," that's not what the Wall Street Journal said. That's my interpretation of what the Wall Street Journal said. "The joint venture known as Stargate will build data centers for OpenAI, with the involved companies committing $100 billion and planning to invest up to $500 billion over the next 4 years. The plan's foundational elements of which remain vague were announced Tuesday at the White House ceremony with Trump. Don't forget, OpenAI is a competitor to X. X has XAI. XAI, last time I checked, is valued over $50 billion, which is entirely a startup that fell out of the X acquisition. And XAI on its own is more valuable than the purchase price for X, and it makes the whole X thing a freebie for Musk. And don't forget that X itself owns its data, right? So XAI actually has access to data that is legal, whereas everybody else's AI is stealing data from other sources, and that will be a continued problem. There's been but the point being that they are competitors. There's been long-standing tension between Musk and Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI. Musk has sued OpenAI's attempt to convert from a nonprofit to a for-profit company, calling it a, quote, market paralyzing gorgon. I don't know what that means, but I like that phrase. Musk's comments set off a war of words on X yesterday. Altman initially sounded a conciliatory note saying, I genuinely respect your accomplishments and think you are the most inspiring entrepreneur of our time. But then he later posted, I realize what is great for the country isn't always what's optimal for your companies, Elon, but in your new role, I hope you mostly put America first. Musk fired back with a string of posts yesterday. He repeated criticisms of Altman and OpenAI, replying, "It's fake," to one user's tweet, citing that Stargate's announcement and saying in another, "Sam is a swindler." Just like Lucas Myrtle maybe is being accused of. I have no information on that one way or the other. I'm not saying he's a swindler. Sam is a swindler, Musk says. Musk also retweeted a post showing a photo of what appeared to be a drug pipe and a baggie of powder. Under the caption, leaked image of the research tool OpenAI used to come up with the 500 billion number for Stargate. A drug pipe and a baggie. I love billionaire fights. Do you love billionaire fights? And so does Trump love them, by the way. He just seems to thrive on the chaos. And at the end of the day, he believes, it seems clear to me, he just believes that the best ideas are going to win or they're going to filter to the top. And I just love following along these things. I don't know if there's lessons for us apart from don't be afraid of chaos, but billionaire fights are the best. We talked also yesterday about Canadian energy and the tariffs and the trade war. And it was interesting yesterday, I found a Wall Street Journal article reiterating all of the points. And so it seems to me that the Canadian message of energy needs of the Americans needing Canadian energy is really seeping into the American dialogue, which is a great thing for Canada. And if that's true, this is entirely because of Danielle Smith, Premier of Alberta, and she should get credit for that. Wall Street Journal says the cheap Canadian oil America craves is becoming a key bargaining chip in President Trump's threatened trade war. The country's energy markets have grown increasingly intertwined in recent decades, with the multi-billion-dollar pipelines and sprawling refineries built specifically for Canadians to funnel stateside tar-like crude with booming oil fields in Alberta. Surging trade has driven down prices at the pump in the Midwest and has helped transform the Gulf Coast into a global export hub. But Trump is, again, just to remind you, so the tar sands in Alberta bring out a heavy, sort of dirty crude, and we refine nothing in Canada. We just give it away cheap to the Americans in great volume. And the Americans have built special purpose refineries to refine that and make actual useful products out of it, like gas. And it removes all the impurities. And those refineries are specifically built for that Canadian crude. And putting somebody else's crude in there, unless you're buying from perhaps Iraq, Iran, or Venezuela, isn't going to work very well. There's going to be a lot of retooling and a lot of wasted investment and lost time and money. And there's some of these refineries and some of these areas we covered yesterday that, you know, if Canada cut this off, they would have zero. They would have zero energy, and it would be a real problem in the U.S. So there's your background for you. The specter of tariffs on Canadian energy-dependent economy has left the officials from Ottawa to provincial power centers scrambling. If the crude ends up exempt, the Canadian government is considering retaliation that could ensnare all oil shipments. Jonathan Wilkinson's Canadian Minister of Energy, Natural Resources, said in an interview that he would prefer less confrontational responses rather than cutting off the energy. He would prefer to tax the country's oil exports. Exactly what I suggested yesterday. Jonathan, are you checking out my show? But he didn't rule out an extreme measure in the event of escalation, restricting shipments to the U.S. Tariff critics, including the U.S. fossil fuel group, say a trade war that hits Canadian crude would hinder the incoming president's push for energy dominance and boost costs, contrary to his campaign pledge. Gasoline prices buoyed inflation in December. We all know that. Even before you consider Canadian retaliation, the U.S. consumer would take it on the chin from tariffs, said Robert McNally, president of Washington-based consulting firm Rapid Energy Group. I don't think that's how the president wants to start the administration. Here's the point. This is all new. If you're listening to this show, then you know all of this already because we've covered it 3 or 4 times in the last week. But I think what's interesting is it's starting to seep in and be effective in the U.S. narrative. This is good for Canada. I think it's really good for Canada. And I think that it's all credit is due to Danielle Smith, Premier of Alberta, and her work on that. The problem is going to be, as I pointed out yesterday, is Trump is going to say, okay, well, we'll focus on these Eastern manufacturing goods and services. Those are what we'll tariff, and we'll just leave that energy alone. And that means that the eastern part of Canada, where the manufacturing hub is, not that there's not manufacturing everywhere, but the bulk of it is in eastern Canada, and that's going to be crushed. Whereas the western part, where the energy is going to be, and not that there's not hydro, I know, in the eastern part of Canada, but the energy in the western part is going to benefit, and the manufacturing in the east is going to get crushed. And we have no federal leadership to balance those concerns, because clearly what we ought to be doing is taxing and threatening the products from the west so that the products from the east are protected. Otherwise, we have no leverage. We have no leverage of any substance. We have some leverage, but our real leverage is with the energy. This needs a federal solution. We do not have a federal leader. I'm speaking in February at a lenders conference in Calgary, so I'm pretty excited about that. I'm on a panel. In the description of the panel I received yesterday, it says, with economic uncertainty persisting, lenders must sharpen their focus on detecting financial distress at an early stage. This panel will explore key risk indicators across industries, the implications of growing CRA arrears, and best practices for identifying fraud risks. Speakers will also share effective monitoring techniques and discuss early-stage workout approaches that have yielded positive outcomes for lenders. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that sort of thing? I have to now think about today, tomorrow, probably into next week, what my bullet points are then are going to be. But one of them for sure, I can tell you, is going to be about accounting. It's going to be accounting. I have a hypothesis for 2025 that this is not for the larger businesses, but for smaller businesses, entrepreneurs, even the lower end mid-market businesses. Good accounting has become out of reach. It is too complicated. It is too expensive. It costs too much money to hire a CPA of any quality. I mean, if you're a company doing, say, $5, $6, $7 million, like a decent small business or even lower mid-market, depending on what jurisdiction you're defining your lower mid-market, can you really afford to have $150,000, $200,000 in salaries and software related to get some decent reporting out the door? It's a real problem. I find companies all over the place cutting back on that. I talk to lenders that are looking at deals all the time, and investors that are looking at deals all the time. And the quality of accounting in the last 5, 6, 7 years has just dropped off a cliff. And you can't do a deal without accounting, and you can't turn around your business without good information. Well, we have a solution for that at Sinclair Range: virtual and fractional CFO, controller, and bookkeeping services tailored to meet your unique needs and budget, all at a cost that is a fraction of hiring comparable skill sets full-time. As we said, accurate, timely information to make critical decisions, professional reporting that you can use with your lenders, investors, stakeholders, regular coaching sessions from yours truly, and access to the entire Sinclair Range team and network, including investment bankers and analysts. Is basically like having a controller and part-time CFO on your team for your small business at a very, very reasonable price. And by the way, we don't try to pretend to use artificial intelligence, which I've said before does not work for bookkeeping functions at all. And we don't keep things somewhere on a private server where you can't have access to them. You have access to your data at all times. You can terminate us at all times. This is designed to help you. There you go. My little commercial for the day. I rarely do that. This has been Mornings with Scott. We will see you tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Mountain. I should check my comments here. Is there anything I need to respond to? There is not. I was on somebody else's live stream yesterday on LinkedIn, and the person did not check their comments at all. And I thought to myself, why? Why in hell would you do your podcast live if you're not going to respond to the community that's listening to you? Why not just pre-record it? It's so much easier, better quality, better camera, better sound, less technical glitches. So the only reason, of course, would be to trick the algorithm, because that platform likes live stuff instead of pre-recorded stuff. But, you know, the whole point here is the community. Thank you, Oz, Catherine, for joining us on Instagram. But we are signing off. Come earlier next time. See you tomorrow, everybody.